Across this very field as dawn was breaking in October 1944, 35 men with bayonets fixed raced headlong towards more than 250 heavily armed SS troops. In the minutes that followed, and in an episode immortalized in the series Band of Brothers, Captain Dick Winters and the men of Easy Company rained chaos across this now peaceful landscape. But how exactly did that episode come about? What really happened on that day? And do the events around this crossroads match those presented on screen? In this video, using the latest technology, wartime aerial imagery, and the actual accounts of those who were there, we'll explore the charge at Heteren Crossroads. In order to do that, we need to understand the situation as it stood in early October 1944. Just 2 weeks earlier, British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's bold plan to cross the River Rhine at Arnhem and end the war before Christmas had been launched. Beset by problems and poor management, it had failed, but had gained some ground. Among that newly won territory was this patch of land known as the Island, bordered on all sides by waterways, including the mighty rivers Rhine and Waal to the north and south. It was a key area of ground. When Operation Market Garden failed south of the Rhine, the Allies worked hard to expand the narrow corridor right up to the river and secure the flanks to both east and west. But the value of this ground wasn't lost on the Germans, who were also desperate to retake the bridge across the Waal at Nijmegen. So by early October, the scene was set for a bloody encounter that would decide control of the island. The men tasked with consolidating this area came predominantly from the U.S. 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles. By now veterans of Normandy and Market Garden, they had earned a solid reputation on the battlefield. Among their units was the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Like all paratrooper regiments, the 506th was made up of 3 battalions, each consisting of 3 rifle companies of, at least on paper, 125 men each. Abel, Baker, and Charlie companies formed the 1st Battalion. Dog, Easy, and Fox formed the 2nd Battalion. George, Howe, and Item formed the 3rd Battalion. Our focus lies with Lieutenant Colonel Robert Strayer's 2nd Battalion, and specifically Captain Richard Winters' Easy Company. Winters himself was already something of a legend in the airborne, having taken command of Easy Company on D-Day when his company commander's plane was shot down. He had led the assault on the German gun battery at Precourt Manor, earning the Distinguished Service Cross in the process. Since then, he'd fought at Corentin, Bloody Gulch, and in the assault on Nuenen during Operation Market Garden, and he was still only 26 years old. The role of Easy Company and the 506 generally, after moving up to relieve British troops on the northwestern part of the island, was to push north toward the lower Rhine, consolidate the ground won, and prevent enemy incursions across the river. By October 4th, 1944, Easy Company was based around the village of Randwijk, about 1 kilometer south of the river. They were responsible for holding a 2-kilometer stretch of line, including several key outpost positions overlooking the river. Little did they know that the Germans were preparing an attack on this very area. Let's take a moment to explore the battlefield by overlaying a wartime aerial photograph taken on September 6, 1944 by Allied reconnaissance aircraft onto the modern map. We can see that this area has hardly changed over the last 8 decades. Still visible to the southwest is the village of Randwijk, from which an embankment road, or dike, runs parallel to the Rhine toward the village of Heteren. At a small crossroads, another raised road heads north across the flat farmland to the southern bank of the river and a ferry crossing. Across the fields runs a network of drainage ditches which, even today, remain in exactly the same positions they occupied in October 1944. The German plan was to send an entire division crashing across the island from the northwest, drive the Allies back, and retake both the island and the Waal River crossing at Nijmegen, some 15 kilometers to the southeast. To support that attack, during the night of 4 to 5 October, 2 full companies of SS troops silently crossed the Rhine and occupied these fields. Their mission was to launch a diversionary assault the following morning that would draw Allied attention away from the main German offensive. But Captain Winters knew nothing of this. Although close to the Rhine, he had no direct observation of the river itself. To remedy that, at 3:30 a.m. on October 5th, Winters ordered a 4-man patrol to move northeast, occupy a building overlooking the river, and report enemy activity, led by Sergeant Art Newman, With PFC's Al Lesniewski and Stroll, the patrol set off along the southern side of the dike, expecting an uneventful mission through friendly territory. Very soon they discovered otherwise. Approaching this position roughly 20 minutes later, Sergeant Newman ordered Lesniewski to climb onto the top of the dike for a better view northward. The moment he did so, only a few meters away, he found himself staring directly at a heavily manned German machine gun position whose crew had already spotted him. Within seconds, grenades rained down on the patrol, wounding every man. Lesniewski alone suffered an astonishing 32 wounds to his face, neck, and arm. Remarkably, all 4 men escaped and reached safety, reporting back to Captain Winters at 4:20 a.m. with news of what they had discovered. Knowing there should have been no German troops south of the river, Winters immediately ordered one squad from 1st Platoon, together with Sergeant Bowl and a radio operator, to investigate. Following the same route taken by Newman's patrol, the 15-man group used to shelter the dike until they reached a position from which they could see and hear the German machine gun firing intermittently to the south, apparently unaware that no Allied troops were actually there. Realizing he had an opportunity, Winters first attempted to call an artillery support, but without success. Knowing he would have to eliminate the gun himself, he crawled across the roadway unseen before bringing the remainder of his squad across, leaving 2 men behind to guard the flank. He crawled back to his patrol and led them forward. Winters later recalled, "We reached a position about 40 yards from the machine gun. As dawn approached, I halted the patrol and instructed Sergeant Jukeman and Corporal Christensen to set up our machine gun. I then went to each man and, in a whisper, assigned each a target. Then I stepped back and called, 'Ready, aim, fire.' The opening volley was devastating. Although the machine gun initially fired high, the rifle fire was accurate. 3 Germans attempted to escape over the opposite side of the dike, but Winters and his men brought them down. Within moments, all 7 members of the machine gun crew had been killed, but they had stirred up a hornet's nest. Heavy rifle fire erupted from positions farther ahead, forcing Winters to withdraw roughly 260 meters to another shallow ditch. While there, 23-year-old William Jukeman was killed by a German rifle grenade fired from the very position the Americans had just captured. Moving cautiously forward, Winters assessed the battlefield. He knew enemy troops occupied the embankment ahead, but he had no idea how many. His own position was dangerously exposed. The raised roadway along his right flank offered perfect cover for German troops attempting to outflank him, while the open ground beyond left his patrol vulnerable to encirclement against the Rhine. He decided he had to act immediately. Winters radioed for the rest of 1st Platoon, a light machine gun section, Lieutenant Peacock's squad, and Staff Sergeant Floyd Talbert's men, bringing his total force to 35 soldiers. His plan was simple. Using Lieutenant Rice's machine guns as a base of fire, Talbert's squad on the right, Peacock's on the left, and Winters in the center would fix bayonets and charge directly across roughly 265 meters of open field to the embankment. It was an extraordinarily risky decision. Winters later remembered, "I assembled 2nd Squad and explained the plan. Don Hubler was standing right in front of me. When I said, 'Fix bayonets,' he swallowed hard. I could see his Adam's apple struggle up and down. My own adrenaline was pumping harder than ever before. On the smoke signal, the machine guns opened fire. All 3 assault groups sprinted across nearly 200 yards of completely open ground. Winters later joked that although he'd been a good athlete in school, he had never run 200 yards faster in his life. Barely a minute later, having outrun nearly all of his men, Winters reached the embankment and immediately encountered a German sentry. Both men instinctively threw grenades. Neither exploded. Only then did Winters realize that although he had pulled the pin, he had forgotten to remove the tape he habitually wrapped around his grenades to prevent accidental detonation. The German, believing an explosion was imminent, dove for cover. That hesitation gave Winters the opportunity he needed. He rushed forward, fired from the hip, and killed the sentry. Turning to his right, he was astonished to discover more than 100 SS soldiers sheltering nearby, completely unaware of his presence. From less than 20 yards away, Winters fired 15 rounds into the pack formation before Talbert's squad arrived and joined the attack. Within seconds, Peacock's men also reached the embankment and poured fire into the disorganized German force. At the same time, the American machine gun teams moved forward just in time to catch another group of perhaps 100 SS troops crossing the embankment directly into their line of fire. It became a slaughter. Dozens of Germans were killed or wounded, while survivors fled toward the ferry crossing and back across the Rhine. In only a few minutes, 35 American paratroopers had defeated 2 full companies of SS troops on this quiet stretch of Dutch countryside. Unlike the television series, however, the fighting did not end there. Supported by a platoon from Fox Company, Winters continued north in pursuit of the retreating Germans to secure the southern bank of the Rhine. Advancing along this track, his force reached this position before coming under heavy fire from approximately 75 concealed German soldiers. Recognizing the danger being cut off and believing his mission accomplished, Winters ordered withdrawal to the embankment where the original German machine gun had stood. As the last men reached safety, a heavy German mortar barrage struck the rear ranks. 18 Americans were wounded, including Sergeant Bowl, who had played a major role throughout the action. The battle had been a clear victory for the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. They had surprised and routed a much stronger enemy force, though not without cost. One American, William Jukeman, had been killed and 22 others wounded. German losses were considerably heavier, with approximately 50 killed, at least twice that number wounded, and 7 prisoners captured. As depicted in Band of Brothers, those prisoners were escorted to the rear by Private Joe Liebgott, who reportedly had only a single round remaining in his rifle. The actions of Captain Richard Winters and the men under his command on October 5th, 1944 played an important role in preventing the planned German assault to retake the island, which remained in Allied hands for the rest of the war. Today, the battlefield is marked only by a small memorial near the site of the German machine gun position for the men who fought here. However, it remained a place they would never forget. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, why not try our dedicated podcast, World War II, Both Sides of the Wire, where expert historians Jesse Alexander and Professor Matthias Strone examine many of the Second World War's most famous battles from both the Allied and Axis perspectives. That's all for this time. We'll see you again soon.